First of all, I just want to say, the River District, we've heard some about it through the paper, through the media, through council meetings. We're excited about it. And first of all, I just wanted to thank Carl and the Danville Regional Foundation. People have asked where did the River District come from. It came from the Regional Foundation, from research they had done and a field trip they made, and then were gracious enough to take the city on a field trip to Greenville, South Carolina. But the main lesson learned from that was that we have to start from the downtown and revitalize that area and build out. And I think that was one of the themes that came from Greenville, and that's what they brought back here. So without them and without their gracious grant, we would not be sitting here, this would not be possible. And again, we're very excited because we believe that a thriving city like Danville we want to be has to be an attractive and a desirable place to live, and we feel like we can accomplish that with a plan for the River District. So with the grant, was $75,000 grant matched by $25,000 by the city. We requested that we put out an RFP to select a national firm to conduct the study. The city, we put out an RFP. We had a tremendous response. We had 22 responses from Massachusetts to Oregon. We had very top-notch international firms submit proposals. We reviewed all the proposals. We interviewed 6 via video conference. We interviewed 3 firms in person at City Hall. And then we made the selection of which Allison Platt and BBP were the firm that we selected to conduct the survey. In the final presentation, we asked 2 questions. We wanted to hear from the firms what their responses were to these 2 questions, one of which was, what are the 5 greatest opportunities and the 5 biggest challenges you see for this area? And then we also wanted to know, how will you involve and engage the community in this process? And I think that the latter one is very key to us, and I know key to BBP and Allison Platt, and that's one of their strengths, is involving the community. And we're excited about the process of this as much as we are the end product. The process of involving the community, hearing from the community, and having this be a community plan, not just a city plan or a foundation plan, but something that the community can wrap their arms around and embrace and help us execute. Some of the responses to the opportunities that we have, obviously the riverfront, which is the reason for doing the study. We feel like that's a great asset. The authentic history and the character of that area, the expansion of some arts and cultural events, large stock of historic buildings and redevelopment opportunities, the city involvement, the trail, the bike system, the new Y, the new Averett, the Regional Foundation setting up shop downtown along with all the other businesses we've had set up down there recently. Some of the challenges that we're going to face, according to some of the responses from the foundation, from the proposals, the connectivity, the walkability. I don't know if that's an official word, but it sounds good to me. The walkability of that district. It's a large district, so to make sure that we can have a connection from one end to the other. The vacancies. We all know there's vacancies down there, so that's going to be a challenge, and we're going to try to address the cost of renovation. River access and the orientation of buildings. I think with the Y being one of the new additions downtown, that's actually going to take advantage and face the riverfront will be a positive thing. And then again, just kind of going on, once we've announced the selection, it was BBP and Allison Platt. You'll hear from her in a second. One of the things we're looking for, again, is public involvement. There will be interviews, workshops, survey, public forums, charrettes, and social media and websites set up. Please check our website, danvilleva.gov. There'll be a link to BBP and Allison Platt. There'll be a River District set up soon, a site dedicated on our website. There'll be a link to a site that will provide updates, downloads, pictures, forms for questions and comments. So please pay attention to that. Keep track of that. We'll try to get that up as quick as we can. The plan development will take about 5 to 7 months. The implementation can take anywhere from short-term to long-term, anywhere from immediate gains of several months to out 10 years. So hang with us there. We're going to make some investments, and we hope that you sitting in this room will make some investments in this area. And again, we're very excited, and we firmly believe that to be a thriving city, we need to be attractive in a desirable location. We feel like the River District will help us accomplish that. Again, thank you for coming. Allison Platt, I'm going to turn it over to you, and welcome, Allison.
Good morning. This is the best group I could possibly have spoken to first because you are probably the most important group in this whole process. I mean, I like to think that I'm a good designer, and I've been doing it for a long time. But whether a project succeeds or not depends upon all of you, not on me. So your involvement and your getting other people to get involved and come to meetings and say what they think is probably the most important element. I've done probably 80 plans in my 30 years in this business, and some succeed and some fail. And the ones that fail are the ones that have no follow-through. We're going to talk about that a little bit today in the slideshow. I'm going to show you examples from 3 different towns that show different things that are aspects of a master plan that you need to know about, and also just kind of explain the whole master planning process, because for many communities, when they do a master plan, it'll be the first one. So you need to understand what it is and what it isn't and what it can do for you. So let's get started. So what is a master plan? It's not construction drawings and is not a regulatory framework. It should be a compelling vision of what your town can become. And it's a blueprint for accomplishing that vision. The process must include a mechanism for public involvement, which we're starting today. And it has to have buy-in so that the plan becomes part of the community culture. That's the only way it's going to succeed. Next. The essential ingredients of a successful plan are committed leadership, public participation, effective analysis of problems and opportunities, realistic market assessment, and project feasibility work. Very important. You can't just make a pretty picture and think it would be nice to have X, Y, or Z without knowing that there's a market for it in your community. You need an innovative, realistic, and a phased plan because these things take time. You need catalyst private projects, and you also need public improvements. You have to show commitment on the public side so that the private side is willing to invest. You need implementation strategies, including funding mechanisms, and I might add, responsibilities and timetables. And you need design standards for new buildings and renovations so that, and sometimes this comes after the master plan, but you have to be sure that if you do infill buildings that they complement the buildings that you have, and you do have an incredible store of really amazing buildings. I'm just blown away by how beautiful your community is. Next. So what makes a plan fail? Plans for which there is money but no interest, desire for a plan but lack of follow-through, divided leadership, lack of public participation, public participation without direction, which results in a vision plan that can't be implemented, lack of experience with redevelopment markets, attractive plans without assigned responsibilities and timelines, planning studies without dynamic plans, or any of the above without a clear implementation plan. Next. I'm going to show you examples of these 3 communities. I've worked in a lot, but these are among the more successful, which is always a good thing to show you. And also, I think each of them has some aspects that can apply here in Danville. Next. I've been working in New Bern for about 25 years. It's very unusual for a consultant to have the opportunity to work in a single community for so long. I've done 3 master plans for them, planned most of their downtown streets and parks, and I'm extremely fortunate to have done that. But the thing that gives me is a sort of long view to see what it takes to get started, what kind of commitment it takes to follow through and actually make these things happen. And really, New Bern has gone from being pretty empty downtown to being one of the most successful revitalization stories in North Carolina. Next. That was a sketch, by the way, of what the downtown could look like with a new streetscape that was done in 1990, and it does look very similar to that now. What happened after we did the first master plan, and I'm not going to go into each of these plans because we don't have time, but I wanted to show you the kinds of things that started to happen in that first 10 years, and then we'll go on to the next 10 years. So when Streetscape started to go in, what happened was that the private sector became energized, and they believed in the commitment of the public sector, and so they started to do things like renovate the facades of their buildings. Next. We did the streetscape. They hadn't done any new streetscape work in about 75 years, and so we designed a very unique streetscape for them. Those hexagonal pavers were specially made for this project, and all the downtown streetscapes look like this now. They have very narrow streetscapes, but it's still a very successful streetscape. Next. We suggested things like if you were to look to your left here, which of course you can't, there was a really pretty little alley called Church Alley that was right on axis with the Baptist church. And if you turned to the right, this is what you saw. This is probably the most beautiful church in downtown New Bern, right in the center of town. And there was a pool hall in front of it. So we suggested that maybe if they had the opportunity to acquire that building and add a pass-through from parking to that block and have that view, that they should do it. So they did. Next. I think that an important part of the plan is the sketches. We have Eric Hine, who I've worked with for about the last 30 years, who's the illustrator, and you'll see his sketches all through here. He's really wonderful. He's very talented. He has this knack of, I talk to him about what I'm doing and what I envision, and he just draws it. And lots of times that ends up being what it actually looks like. So this is what it looked like on the left, and on the right was the sketch that we did of what it could look like. Next. This was the shoreline on the left, and this is the park today. Next. Some of the things that happened since 1990 is they did a new section of the Sheraton Hotel, which is now a Hilton, and they also built a conference center right on the water, which, by the way, has no parking but still is successful. Next. A lot of the downtown buildings started to be renovated. Next. And this building was an empty lot, and everybody said, well, first of all, nobody's going to build a new building downtown, and second of all, who would ever want to live downtown? That's never going to happen. Well, this building was built as the first streetscapes were going in, and they pre-sold all the condos, and there's retail on the ground floor, and this building has been tremendously successful. Next. And this old hotel building had been empty for years, and more recently this has now been renovated and filled with retail. Next. This is a new building on the left, and also on the right this is a restaurant that was built on the water, which is now open. Next. And this is a condo on the water. This had always been vacant for many, many years, and this has been quite successful. It's been a little bit slow getting started because of the market, but it's picking up now. Next. There's also a wonderful, what happens, I think, when a community starts to succeed is there's buzz. And people get more caught up in it, and then you get bigger investments and more significant investments. One of the things that you need to look at in a plan is your corridors. It's not just buildings, and it's not just parks, but it's also connections. There used to be a bridge across the river at the end of this where you can see the blue there, and the NCDOT decided to remove the bridge because it was in poor repair. So this road then became a very important gateway into the downtown, so improving it was very important. And this was a sketch to show what that could look like that we did in 2000. Next. And this is as they were putting it in last summer. Let's talk about what this accomplished. The 1990 master plan, with fairly small investment, we call it the bootstrap plan, which is that they started with their own MSD funds, they bonded off them, they didn't go to anybody else for funding, they just did it themselves. And that produced $30 million in private investment over 10 years. Now remember, this is only a town of 20,000, or at least it was, it's larger now. The 2000 master plan, which was building on the success of the 1990 plan, engendered $70 million in private investment. And in 2006, we did a plan, finished in 2007, which planned for the 300th anniversary of New Bern, which was last year. And everything just started to take off then. So there's been $160 million in public and private investment, including a new bridge and the History Education Center and so on, since 2006, which is pretty amazing. Tourism was $12 million a year in the 1980s. And in 2007, which is the latest figures they have, it was $108 million. So a plan is a really, really good investment. It's not spending money. Yes, it is spending money. But the money that you spend is minuscule in proportion to the potential gain. Next. Okay, now we'll talk about Goldsboro a little bit. Goldsboro was a little earlier in the process than New Bern because they've been doing it for a long time. But the thing that's important about Goldsboro and New Bern is that they have a really committed group of leaders in the community who do have that long view and who understand that it has to be done over a period of time with a consistent view. Next. And one of the things that I'm showing in this set of plans is a little bit about the analysis drawings, because I want you to understand what we're going to be going through in the next couple of months in order that we come up to speed to understand how your community works, how it functions, circulation, building condition, and so on, so that we can bring that to the table. Because, we do bring skills. BBP are very excellent development economists, and I've been doing urban design for a long time. So sometimes somebody from without can look at your community and see things that you don't, just because we bring those skills. But of course, our skills are useless without your input, so we're going to act like a sponge for the next couple of months. In Goldsboro, the downtown streets were attractive, but they had few amenities. And the buildings were actually quite lovely, which is the situation you have as well. The approaching streets into the downtown were quite unattractive, and that's typical, actually. Signage and gateways bringing people to the downtown were confusing or non-existent, and that's also true here, let me tell you, because when I came into town, I always perform this little mental exercise. Here I am, I'm a stranger, I want to visit your downtown. How do I get there? How do I find what I need? And it's very hard to do if you don't know your way around. And I want to tell you one little story, which is that you have visitor center signs around the downtown. But I discovered that your visitor center is not downtown. I expected it to be. It's fine for it to be where it is. Maybe there also needs to be one downtown. But when you had those little visitor centers, like I was walking around downtown trying to figure it out, and I thought, okay, here's the visitor center signs. I'll go there. I'll get maps. I'll find out what's great in Danville, and I'll go visit it. Well, I couldn't get there, because here's the sign in the downtown that says visitor center, but the visitor center was way out on the highway. So when I tried to follow it, I went into this rather unattractive area, and I thought, no, I must have missed it. So I turned around and came back. And those are the kinds of things you have to think about if you're trying to welcome people into your community. Next. Goldsboro has some really beautiful old buildings, and they're doing their very best to save them. I happen to be the chairman of the Historic District Commission, so I'm very involved in that and a great believer in the value of old buildings. Next. So these are some of the maps that we might do. These are done on GIS, and some of them your city staff has already done, which is terrific, so we can kind of take off from there. But things like this show, this is land use, and by using colors you can highlight, what's commercial, what's industrial, and so on, and sort of start to get a feel for the physical layout, which us urban designers, we really like doing that. Next. As far as residential revitalization, we understood that the strength and the quality of the residential neighborhood around the downtown was really key to supporting the downtown, because if you could live nearby and walk downtown, that kind of activity where you have daytime activity and nighttime activity, eyes on the street from people living there, is a very, very important key to making all those things work together. Mixed use really is important. So one of the things you look at, and your area is more complex. You have the river, you have the tobacco warehouse district, you have the downtown, and you have the surrounding residential. So it's a complex set of variables. And here you'll see that we're looking at the types of street. The red shows the highest level of sort of retail street where you want benches and newspapers and bike racks and that sort of thing. The blue is a vehicular street, which means that it has to be attractive, but it doesn't have to be to the same level. And then there's residential streets. And then amongst that, you can see there's the residential around, the retail core, and those blue stars are attractions. Very important to understand, because people need to move between attractions. So you need to understand how things look between these places in order to make them work properly and to make people want to walk. And that's your goal. Next. This is the master plan. A little hard to see from the back of the room, I'm sure. But you can see it looks very carefully at the existing buildings, which are the ones shown in yellow. And then the buildings that you see in blue or red. Blue is attractions, and red are new buildings. And they're all assigned uses, and there's square footages and so on. And This is where the economists will look at, there's a back and forth there. We say, well, we need to fill this area in, or we need to reuse a building, whatever, what's feasible, and then we'll take it from there. Next. And this just sort of, one of the things that we identified early on there, and I think you've alluded to this in your desire for a plan as well, is streetscape improvements. And although the main street, which is Center Street, was attractive, the buildings were attractive, the environment was not attractive. So we said early on, if you want to get more businesses downtown, you need to have an attractive environment. So that was one of the things that we looked at. Next. This is the rotary coming into downtown, and it's got 4 rows of angled parking, which is not very friendly to people walking. But one of the things that we did was to look at sites that we thought were key to improving the appearance of the area, and also key properties for redevelopment. And this one that's up in the corner here is one of them. So this is the before, next, and this is the after. And this, this is a 3-story building, which is about appropriate for the scale of buildings in Goldsboro. And I think as the streetscape starts to improve, that probably a building, it might be 2 stories, but similar to this will, one of the things that a sketch like this does is it starts to set for people an idea in their mind of what the quality of the architecture you're looking for. It's not metal, it's not concrete block, it's something that fits with the historic context. Next. This is the sketch of the downtown. These are actual buildings. This little one with the green awnings actually looks like this. It's already been restored. This is the 100% corner at Walnut and Center, and we put a rotary in, which it was part of the sketch. It was a nice idea, and interestingly, I've just done the construction drawings for 6 blocks of the streetscape, and one of the councilmen said to me as we were starting, he said, "You're going to put that rotary in there, aren't you, with the fountain?" This was just an idea, and we said, "Oh yes, that's going to be there, absolutely, sir." Next. So these are the construction drawings, which we've done for the downtown. The retail streets still have 2 rows of head-in parking because they're kind of wedded to it there. It's not my favorite, but whatever works. And the other blocks are a wider median. So after having 10% non-paved area in a 140-foot right-of-way, now there's going to be lots more trees and shade and so on and so forth. It's going to be entirely different. Next. So the results are 3 years prior to the master plan, the city realized more than $9 million in downtown investments, 7.1 public and 2.1 private. In the 3 years after the master plan was adopted, the city realized $33 million in downtown investments, 15.9 public and 17.7 private. So it still has a ways to go, but the trend is going in the right direction, especially given that we're in tough times. Next. The last plan I want to show you is the Textile Corridor Master Plan in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And I picked that one because it has a lot of industrial buildings in it. So in that way, it's similar to Danville. Next. It was a very interesting plan. There's a textile building there that printed fabric. And at the end, before it closed down, which was quite a few years ago, it was 1 million square feet under one roof. So they had just kind of grown from a couple of buildings, and then they'd put roofs over the streets between them and, taken up the streets, and it was this huge mass of buildings. And there was a lot of historic work that we did on this to understand how it evolved, and I imagine we'll do that with this too, because it seems like it's pretty fascinating what your history must be. So for the process, it was a 6-month work program, somewhat similar to this one. There was a couple of advisory groups, the Old Town Roundtable and the Textile Corridor Committee Oversight. There was a lot of community outreach, a lot of meetings, website, building and site analysis, market analysis, and financial analysis. Next. There was historic evaluation of the buildings. We really went into the history of the buildings. Transportation analysis, urban design analysis and plan, conceptual architectural analysis, marketing plan, and implementation recommendations. Next. The key findings were that the market had the key strengths, which we alluded to. The textile corridor could become, in the opinion of the economists and myself, a regional destination, and that the historic value of those buildings was key to the success of that whole endeavor. Adaptive reuse and new construction were included. There was a mixed-use approach as opposed to one big use. There was important trolley and rail linkages that were part of the plan. Winthrop University market and planning dynamic was very important, and I just heard yesterday from David that your university is going to have a graduate school in the Tobacco Warehouse District. That's great. That's feet downtown. That's exactly what you need. That's wonderful. And the downtown's right next door, much as it is here, so the linkages between them became very important. They had to be attractive and easy to navigate. Next. This was the master plan. Next. This is the area closest to the downtown. Across the road here, that's the beginning of the downtown. There's a couple of textile buildings right there at that gateway, and then we infilled with medium density housing, and then the bleachery buildings are up there to your right. Next. And then in the upper part, Winthrop University is down below the railroad tracks there and wanted to expand, so we expanded it into the site as part of our plan. And in the middle is mill housing. Now, I took the slide out yesterday of the mill housing part of this project, but I understand that you have mill housing here too. Darn. Well, I'll show you next time. Next. One of the things that was best to really emphasize in Rock Hill was the distinctive character of the area, and there was buildings that were very distinctive. Next. They have a power plant that's really dynamite, and we foresaw that this could be like a brewery, which would be a wonderful environment. So playing on that very distinctive character had to be important. This is a picture of Savage Mill in Maryland, which is an old set of mills which have been redone for retail and office and a whole bunch of uses, and it's really a wonderful, interesting set of buildings, and people go there as much for the ambiance as they do for the stores. These are some of the sketches that showed, this is the entertainment area. This water area was a reservoir for fires, and so we saw we could turn it into an asset and a concert area. Next. This is the old power plant. It happens to be in the north part of the site right next to Winthrop University, so it was a great place for a microbrewery because students, you know. Next. And this is the old Anderson building, which would be residential. So, and the streets which had been restored, which are quite narrow, and we kept that way. Next. And then we also, in some areas that were had buildings that were not worth saving or that were vacant property, we suggested that they might have a hotel and conference center, which the city needed. But to integrate it into this historic context would be a great thing, and it would be a great thing here too. I would certainly prefer staying downtown to staying over where I'm staying at the Hampton. So the results, the plan was approved by City Council. An industrial heritage corridor was proposed, and a TIF was enacted. And you know what a TIF is? A TIF is a tax increment finance district, very useful in many cases for helping to leverage new development to do public improvements. Brownfield funds were also obtained because there was a need for remediation. And at the city's instigation, the South Carolina legislature adopted the Textile Communities Revitalization Act, which provides 25% tax credits for revitalization of textile mill structures, regardless of whether they are designated as historic, and if they are, in addition to historic tax credits. So it was just a further incentive for people to redevelop these properties. Next. The city also enacted a 1-cent capital project sales tax that is expected to generate $2.25 million for recommended railroad grade crossing improvements into and near the textile corridor. And South Carolina's senator is now assisting the city to obtain federal funding through the New Starts program for implementation of a vintage trolley route along the corridor and into the downtown. Next. So what's next? Please talk to your friends and your neighbors and get involved in the process. The success of the plan depends on developing a shared vision for Danville's future, tempered, of course, by market realities. And this must be a long-term commitment. Once the plan is completed, it is then up to the citizens, staff, and elected officials of Danville to make it a reality. And we'll do everything we can to help. We're very pleased and honored to be part of this project and hope you will all participate. Thank you.